Death or Prison, brought to you by leanonmeusa.org. Now let's join Johnny Branham and Elmo Golden in their discussion with pro football player Emmanuel Lamur in the episode entitled, What's Missing?
I am Johnny Branham, and to my left I have our distinguished guest today, Mr. Emmanuel Lamur. To my right I have Mr. Elmo Big Mo Golden.
That's right.
And we are here talking about what is missing. And so now when we say what is missing, you know, there are a lot of things that come into mind, but there's something that we're talking about specifically today. But before we get into what's missing, I want you, Emmanuel, to tell our listeners and our viewers a little bit about yourself from those who may not know you.
Well, my name is Emmanuel Lamur, NFL vet, going into my 8th year. First team was with the Cincinnati Bengals for 4 years, and Minnesota Vikings for 2 years, Oakland Raiders for 1, New York Jets. It's been a blessing. It's everything I've ever dreamt of. But again, this race is not done yet. And I'm continuing to serve the community, serve the people. And there's something that I live by as a code is to serve is better than to be served. So that's my mission as a kingdom man. And with these young kings, we're here to share some great things to help out the youth at risk and the returned citizens. But this is going to be a good section for all of us. So let's just dive into this.
When you talk about at-risk youth,
Mm-hmm.
there's usually some components that make them at risk. And so when we talk about what's missing, I know one of the main things that is missing is someone who can step into their lives or someone who is present in their lives that can help steer them on the path to. And when we say youth, we normally think of steer someone into manhood, but we can also open it up and talk about steering someone into womanhood, you know, because all youth need some type of positive person in their life, some type of person who is more or less like a bedrock, you know, that helps them on that path. Share a little bit on that in your life.
Yeah, just growing up as a young boy in the inner city, as you guys could attest in these things for sure. You know, growing up in a family where my parents migrated from Haiti, it was just trying to make our lives a better, you know, life for us. My mom and dad working nightless hours, man, just grinding. And as you guys know, Haitians work hard. But, you know, it's something that, you know, I grew up, you know, not only watching, but experiencing as a young kid. And just watching my dad just doing garbage day in and day out. My mom working 2-3 jobs, man, and playing football. You know, my mom wasn't unable to come to the games just because of her work hours. And for me, you know, it was one of those things for like I had to. It was crazy because I felt like I had put so much pressure on myself growing up because for me, I didn't want to see them in that situation. But you know, it's crazy because growing up in that environment, as you guys know, man, you try to do anything that you can just to survive. And everybody's story is different. But for me, I was blessed and fortunate enough to grow up with a father and a mother. And a lot of people and a lot of these young kids in the streets, you know, they don't have nobody to look up to or a father figure or a life coach or a mentor. And sometimes they could be misguided. And it's crazy because, you know, it could be your friend next door. You know, you guys may be playing in the street, playing football, but you never know what the person is going through in their household.
Absolutely.
Just because of that missing piece that's not there, whether it's a mother or father being present. And for me, it's not about just having a father or a mother, but they were also present. And I think that was very important in my life. But also it took a lot of sacrifices for me as a young kid to, you know, be motivated by that. Because again, most youth, they tend to get misguided because of the lack of guidance, you know, not someone they could look up to. So where do they go? In the streets.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And sometimes they try to fill that void by, you know, committing crimes or sleeping with women or taking drugs or whatever. The list goes on and on.
Right.
But I think what's important is to have, you know, a group of leaders and a community where we can lean on. And I think that's very, very important. And I think that's part of discipleship for these young kids could look up to someone not only doing the right things, but leading by example.
I know one of the things that we see in the inner city and not just in the inner city, but we can even broaden it even to outside of the inner city in different schools and things like that. Sometimes we see boys raising boys,
Right.
the peer pressure thing. And so when you don't have a definition of what it is to be a man or what it is to be a woman or what it is to be someone successful in society, and the only thing that you have to look at is the disparity going on around you, it becomes a little bit difficult.
Right.
You need someone to come along almost and show you something different and say, hey, there's another way than dealing drugs. There's another way than, maybe living, in poverty, so to speak. And I know you, Elmo, you on a weekly basis. In fact, I want to say, was it last night or so, you've taken it upon yourself through some of your experiences to now reach back and say to the youth that are coming up, hey, don't get involved in this. Don't do that. Speak a little bit about some of the things that you've gotten into as far as mentoring and how that experience has not only helped shape the lives of some of these young boys and girls, but also how it's kind of changed you.
Well, this is a touchy subject for me, and here's why. Because of course, I was raised in a single family home, and I applaud my mother because she gave me everything I needed to be successful. But when I left the house, it's where I had those encounters with some of the guys that they were already stuck in the selling drugs and the using drugs and the womanizing, and that stuff became attracted to me because I saw the pretty cars, I saw the pretty girls. I even saw my girls I went to school with. They would actually stop in those little drug spots, and I'm trying to figure out why these particular guys have everything and I don't have anything. And so I began to pattern my life after them, and it's apparent right now the gold teeth, the tattoos. As I got older, I wanted to get involved with the cars and stuff like that, not knowing that any of this stuff had no significance to me actually going on and having an identity and turning into the man that my mother taught me to be. And so you dishonor your family when you go out and you take on a life of crime. You dishonor your name. You dishonor everything that your family, your mother, like you said, your parents was working for so that you can have a better life.
Absolutely.
So with those things that were missing in my life, I've actually dedicated my life now to giving the youth, those children that I see that are without. I've given my life, the rest of my life, to helping them, to being involved in their life. Like you said, last night I went out and I had my 3 boys with me. They're my adopted kids. I actually spoke with their father last night, who's incarcerated. And him and I talked, and I asked him, listen, I have your sons with me. He calls me. I have your sons with me. Would you like to speak with them, or do you need anything? And he had a beautiful conversation with his sons, 3 sons, without a father. Wow. That's incarcerated. So, and that begins to become a pattern in our culture, in this generation, that we are able to walk away from our children and because of our selfishness. Right. That's how you end up making a life of crime, because honestly, you're not thinking or worrying about anyone else but yourself. Wow. And so, that's just a little bit about what I do and how I got involved with Lean on Me and Alpha USA, because they share the same passion and the same heart, and they have a tremendous drive for reaching back to help those that are without. And we're telling them, I tell my kids, I make them say it, I am not going to jail. They say, I'm not going to jail. I say, I'm going to graduate. They say, I'm going to graduate. And so you start reinforcing by making those things become repetitious in their mind, right? So that when they get older, they'll understand. I teach them the struggles. I teach them. I don't just go out and entertain them. Right. We teach them. We take them to the museum of science and industry. We take them out we take them fishing. We take them to feed the homeless. We take them to do hospital visits and nursing home visits. And so that they become complete people then. When kids find out that they have a support team, they have a network behind them, that's good. They flourish.
That is it. Emmanuel, there are some kids out there that they have aspirations to do exactly what you've done and that you're doing, meaning they have dreams of being something professional, going into the NFL, going into the NBA, and not necessarily going into the sports. They have dreams of
Right.
owning their own business, because I think of the draft of life, how God has already drafted us. With that, we're already precious. But sometimes what happens is you need someone else
For sure.
to come along and remind you that you're special.
Right.
And so if you could speak to them and give them something that has helped you that you think could help them, what would it be?
Man, something that I've always told myself is never let someone else's opinion become your reality. And what I mean by that is know what you want in life, because at the end of the day, only you know what you want to be in life, regardless of who says you're not good enough, or you're not fast enough, or you're not smart enough, or you talk funny, right? Because you gotta understand, I was that kid, and I pretty much just put all that to the side and looked up to God and said, hey, what do you have for my life? You gotta know your identity. You gotta know your identity in Christ. And guess what? It's okay if you don't know your identity in that young age, but guess what? Believe in yourself. Never doubt yourself. Continue to believe in yourself always. And guess what? Sometimes you got to write those goals down so you can see it. You know, I remember in elementary school, my teacher used to always ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? NFL player. All right, so anything else? Nope, NFL player. But for me, it's because I knew what I wanted to do in life. And I think that's so important, because one thing that I say is, you don't choose your passion chooses you. And it's something that God already placed inside of us. We all have destiny inside of us. We all have greatness inside of us, but you have to unleash it. How do you unleash it? Well, you got to know where your main source comes from, and that's God. When you have a relationship with God, when you have a relationship with someone that loves God, you know, sometimes you may not have the community where, you know, you may have believers, but there's always information out there. You know, it comes down to this: how bad you want it. You know, for me, and I can only speak from my experience, what motivated me more than anything was to help my mom and dad. But I just wanted a pat on my back from my parents. You know what I mean? That meant a lot for me. You know, I just wanted to make them proud.
Yeah.
So I used to tell my mom and dad, yo, I'm gonna stay away from the streets, right? I'm not gonna do this. You know, I just wanted to get their approval. I just wanted to get their validation and their affirmation. That's what mattered to me the most. But I also grew up in a church. So I had a good foundation. And I think that's very, very important growing up as a kid. And that's why we're talking about youth at risk, because sometimes they don't have that, you know, leadership. They don't have that mentor. So where do they find it? Most of the time they try to go in the streets, and sometimes it could turn out the wrong way. But I think it's very, very important for us to extend, you know, that void for these youth, because again, I know how important is that. And I look at my life growing up, I'm like, man, if I didn't have a dad or a mom, how would my life turn out? You know what I mean? But I was fortunate and blessed enough to have that. But that's definitely, I will speak to every single kid right now, is believe in yourself and never let someone else's opinion become your reality. Because it's not about what the person says, it's what God says.
One of the things that I know that is definitely integral when we're talking about sports is you had teammates.
Right.
Teammates who, when you're training, when you're down in the trenches, when you're playing a game and the scoreboard doesn't look like you're gonna win, someone that comes on the sideline and pumps you up and says, "We're gonna win this. This isn't going to be what it looks like on the scoreboard. We're going to actually triumph." And you need that. And then you got your coaches.
Right.
Well, your coaches are the ones that say, remember your training. Remember who you are. Remember the blood, the sweat, everything that you went through. This is what you're going to do. You're going to do what you've already been trained to do. And so that's what we're saying. We want to be the ones that come in who we have diverse backgrounds and be able to share with you, to be able to give you the help and the training that we know that would benefit you in moving forward. There's a pipeline. You got the school to prison pipeline. You got so many different things that contribute to the incarceration rates. A lot of them have to do with just that. Someone who has lost hope, someone who has gravitated to drugs, someone who has gravitated to crime, someone who has just said, you know what? The kids on the street have a better way from me. It's deception, but it's sometimes deception is people's reality. There are people who have gone down the street that you think is safe for you to travel down. And so we're going to meet you in the middle of the street and try to, as best as we can, escort you back the other way, because we already been down that road. You know, the old saying, we've been down that road. You don't want to go down there. Ain't nothing, you know, and everything like that. And so when we talk about that, me, you, and Laz is not here presently right now, but between the three of us, we have over 41 years of being incarcerated. We've seen a lot of different things when it comes to at-risk youth and returning citizens. I've seen 3 generations in prison at one time. When I say I've seen a grandfather, a father, and the grandson all in one place. And the sad part about it is, the heartbreaking part, they're proud. That's my boy.
Right.
He's followed in my footsteps.
Right.
But that mentality, it needs to be broken, and it needs to start with our youth. Even if they have someone that, and I brought you up because you're talking about, you're mentoring some youth who have a father who's in prison. So what's some of the things that you've seen just in the short time that you've been mentoring them that have changed, that you may have saw some behavior that may have it had gone unchecked, taking them down the wrong path?
Right. You know, earlier Emmanuel, he used the phrase kingdom man, the leader, the priest of the house.
Yep.
That's a result of that person not having that training, that connection. Once the king of the house is gone, the whole house is out of order. That teaching's not there. Those instructions are not there. And we look at the traits that you talk about of not having a kingdom man in place. The results are you pick up anything that's available that you think that looks like leadership, that looks like manhood,
right?
That looks like a mature person that has it all together. And sometimes that person is a drug dealer. Sometimes that person, you know, is a pimp, a womanizer. Sometimes that person is just a bum on the street. And so those traits are transferable. So if my dad was a bum, then I can learn from him how to be a bum. If my dad was not around, I can, just what I did for my kid. I wasn't around. And these are facts.
Right.
So because I have experienced this. And so when I didn't want anything better for myself, how can I want something better for my kids? At some point, when you realize that you are the leader, you are the example, then those are the times that you need to man up. And you need to stop thinking about yourself and think about legacy. That's something we don't talk about. Legacy. What are you leaving behind? And so here it is. You fathered these kids, and all of them are destructive. All of them are not adding to the community. You know, it's heartbreaking when your mom, you know, your friends or her friends ask, "Where's my son? Where's your son?" And for years, I stayed in prison for 17 years. So for 17 years, my mom had to say, "He's in prison." Think about that. Your mom, that person you love, she has to say for 17 years, "I hope he come home." Not only that, and I've been to prison twice. So I went when I was 17. And so for those 5 years, she had to say the same thing.
Wow.
And so once that man's out of the place, that attitude, those traits break down the whole family. Because now your mom is wondering, what did she create? What did she produce? Where did she go wrong? My mom even said that. What did I do wrong?
Right.
And so it's always deeper and it's always further than you can ever imagine because of the decisions that you make. I'm gonna say this real quick. If you have two people growing up in the same house with one single parent and one is always in trouble, what happened? Why are you in trouble? You got the same education, the same you were reared the same way.
Right.
Why are you always in trouble? And why is this person chose to be something other than a menace to society.
Mhm.
And so you and I had a conversation earlier, and I asked you, I said, why do you think that we grew up literally in the same neighborhood? Why did you, and we played football.
Right.
Why did you go on to be something spectacular and I just became a number?
For sure. And that's a great question. For me, and I said it earlier, is that father figure, and that guidance. And I think that's very important, especially as a young child, because every young child want to look up to somebody. And I think that's just something that God just birthed from the beginning. It's something that you can't teach. It just happened naturally, sorry. And for me, that was important for me now that I realized growing up. And it's crazy because it always comes down to one thing and one thing only, is that affirmation. Is affirmation and validation from someone you could look up to. You want to get that pat on the back. That's important, especially for a young boy. For me, that's what I wanted from my dad. And I received that, and that was important to me. And I think that's why a lot of men astray, and fall short, because they try to go out and get it from different places, just like what you were saying, or someone that's selling drugs or whatever, right? But the young kid doesn't know. He only knows what he sees, right? And the mind only knows what it knows.
Right.
So I think that's very important, having that father figure, that leader in the house. We talking about kingdom man, right? And I believe we're all kings. Every man that was born in this world, we're all kings. But in order to be a king, you have to follow authority from the source, which is God. And I think that's very important. But sometimes you could follow someone to err, someone that's doing the wrong things. And that's what it came down to. Let's be honest. You could follow the good things or you could follow the bad things. But it all depends who is that role model. Is that role models extending the goodness, or is the role model extending things that are evil? So it's crazy just thinking about it, because that plays a big factor, especially for a young kid, because that's when things start coming together for the young boy or the young girl. So I think that's very, very important to have that positive role model. Right.
I remember growing up back in the early '80s. I was born in '78. I grew up in the '80s, but there was at least 5 or 6 neighbors that, for some I did know by name, some I didn't know by name, but they all had a license to get on my behind if I got out of line. I better not say anything wrong, do anything wrong or anything, or else they would check. Those were the rules. And I accepted it because it was a culture made that you're going to respect your elders. If Mr. So-and-so says something to you, I give him a license to discipline you. And then when you get home, you're going to get disciplined. And those were the things that kept us in line. And that's what we need to get back to, to where we are coming in as a village and saying, okay, say you're a youth out there, and you say, well, I don't have a dad. I don't have a spiritual foundation. I don't have a compass or anywhere.
Right.
Guess what? You have HELP right here with us. You have help.
Right.
There are people literally waiting at the ends of those means of communication saying, we are here to help you. All you got to do is reach out.
Right.
Reach out, and we're able to help you. We're able to help you to dream again. I think a lot of times what happens is people lose a vision.
Yeah.
You lose not only a vision of who they are in themselves, and then lose a vision or a compass of where they're going in life.
Right.
If we could just get to that, just grab someone by the shoulder at 13 or 14 and say, hey, where are you going?
Right.
Where do you think you're going? And maybe where you think you're going isn't where you want to be.
Right.
Let me show you where you think you're going. Let me give you a glimpse. That's where those testimonies come into play. And then people like yourself can say, hey, this is how I made it.
Right.
I'm showing you the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm showing you a success story. I came up in the same neighborhood you came up in. I walked through the same streets you came up in, but I came out successful because I applied certain principles. Let me help you apply these principles to your life. Let me direct you to the people that will help you apply those principles to your life.
Right.
Right. We're asking you to make contact with these particular churches because when I was growing up, I would not call anybody. I tried to do it on my own. And we're talking about a 10 and 11-year-old boy that went through foster care, that went through the prison system a couple of times, that got arrested for crazy stuff, which you'll hear about it later on in the story in our segments. And it's quite disturbing. That's why it's not something that I just openly talk about. But we want to make sure that you contact these numbers that you see on the board. You find ways, even if it's ways where you can reconnect to some of your family members. You've got to open your mouth.
Absolutely.
He said, help, help, help. It's helping everyone learn their purpose. HELP, we help everyone learn their purpose. And that's what we're trying to do. We tell you these stories and our struggles, not so they're glorified in it, but we in no ways want you to have those experiences that we had. Why not have fullness of life with good experiences by listening to what we're saying? If you under the sound of our voice and you're not taking heed to this information, then you're going to find yourself in difficult situations such as jails, hospitals, or institutions, and at sometimes even the cemetery. So it's time to think about what we're saying and what we're doing.
Absolutely. Anything you want to say in closing, Emmanuel?
Man, I definitely want to say this. We're all kings and queens, but let's live like it. But let's also be like it. Let's extend that to one another. We shouldn't degrade or belittle anyone, period. Because again, we're made to be kings and queens. I definitely wanted to say that to everyone, regardless of what the situation you're going through. Because at the end of the day, God made you special, and we're all special. And I think we should uplift one another, regardless of who or whatever, what it looks like or what the person did. Sometimes you got to put that aside and be like, hey, I'm here for you. I think we need to do that more, and that's love. And that's what God emphasizes over and over again, is loving each other. So I can't preach enough, but let's continue to just love on each other, man. I'm telling you, it's that word love, it goes a long way.
In the end, we're here to fill in the gaps of what's missing. We're here to stand in the place of what's missing. Everyone here has a distinct gift, a distinct talent.
For sure.
God doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't say, you know what, I'm just going to put this person here at this particular time for no purpose, like what you were saying, help people, with their purpose. And so definitely you matter.
You matter.
Yeah.
If you are listening to this podcast, if you are watching this, you matter. Yes, you. You matter. You matter. And that's why we're here, because you matter. You all have a blessed day.
Looking for a welcoming church? Connect at leanonmeusa.org. Be sure to join us next time on Death or Prison for part 1 of our discussion with the shot caller, Casey Diaz. Death or Prison is a production of leanonmeusa.org. Copyright 2020. Death or Prison is offered for information only and is not intended as legal advice. Thank you for listening.
I can change the world. Each one, teach one. One boy and girl. Maybe we can change the